At my son's funeral, while my hand was still shaking from the last prayer, and the dirt from the graveside was still fresh on my shoes, I heard my daughter-in-law say it. She didn't whisper. She didn't flinch. She just said it like I wasn't even standing there. She needs to be put away next. A nursing home, maybe? Somewhere out the way. That was the moment my grief turned into something else. I didn't say a word that day. I didn't look at her. I didn't cry again after that either. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that my son had already made sure I'd never be pushed out of my own life. He changed the will. And when the lawyer read it, her name wasn't even on the page. Before I go any further, thank you for sitting with me. I know this world moves fast. Folks scroll past your pain like it don't cost nothing. But if you clicked on this, if you're still here, that means maybe you felt it too. That sting, that silence, that moment when someone you trusted made you feel like you didn't belong in your own story. So I want you to do something for me, if you can. Tell me where you're watching from. Whether you're sitting in a quiet kitchen, driving home from work, or just laying in bed trying to make sense of things. I want to know who I'm talking to. And if you've ever had your kindness mistaken for weakness, if you've ever been shut out by the very people you sacrificed for, if someone ever made you feel like you were just taking up space, baby, I want to hear your truth. Drop it in the comments below, or send me an email. Doesn't matter if it's one sentence or a whole story. I read every word. I hold them close like letters from women I never met but somehow always knew. You ain't invisible here, you're seen, you're heard, and most of all, you're not alone. My name's Lorraine. I'm 77 years old. I was born in Hawaii, raised on grit, prayer, and the kind of quiet strength you don't brag about, you just carry. I married once. A good man. He worked at the paper mill. He didn't have much, but what he had, he gave. We were only together for 7 years before the cancer took him. He passed when our boy was just a toddler. After that, it was just me and Isaiah against the world. I worked every job they'd give me. Cleaned houses, folded shirts at the thrift store, served cafeteria lunches to children who had more than mine did. There were Christmases where all I could give was a warm meal and a hug. Birthdays with no candles, just me whispering a prayer over my child while he slept. But Isaiah never complained. He was the kind of child that made you believe all the sacrifice was worth it. Quiet spirit, gentle heart, always asked if I needed help carrying the groceries even when he was too little to lift them. He grew into the kind of young man who held the door for strangers and called me every Sunday, even when he moved off to college. First in our family to go. I was so proud my chest could have burst. That's where he met her. Her name was Brielle. Pretty girl. Light-skinned, always had her hair just right. Wore perfume you could smell before she walked into a room. At first, she seemed nice enough, polite, friendly. Said all the right things. But you ever met somebody who smiled with their mouth and not their eyes? Something about her always felt like a performance. When she came to dinner, she brought gifts but never washed a dish. She laughed at Isaiah's jokes but never looked me in the face when she talked. Called me Ma like it was a title, not a relationship. She never said anything mean, not directly. But she made herself loud in the quietest ways. Changed the radio station in my car without asking. Rolled her eyes when I reminded Isaiah to take his vitamins. Took over my kitchen like she paid bills in my house. Small things. Things other people might not notice. But I did. And the hardest part? Isaiah didn't. He was in love. Blind love. Thought she hung the stars. And I didn't want it to be the kind of mother who tore her son away from what made him happy. So I swallowed it. Bit my tongue till it bled. But I never forgot how she looked right past me, like I was just furniture in the house I'd built with my own hands. She didn't say much to my face. But she never looked me in the eye either. The day we buried Isaiah, the sky looked how I felt, gray. Heavy, full of something that wouldn't fall all the way down. The church was packed wall to wall. Folks I hadn't seen in years came out in dark coats and stiff shoes. You could hear the sniffles between the organ notes, smell the rain on everybody's clothes. The flowers on the casket were white lilies, his favorite. I made sure of that. I sat in the front pew, hands folded, tissue crumpled, throat raw from the night before. I don't even remember the eulogy, just the way the preacher said his name like it hurt to speak it. My baby. My only son. Gone before me. That's a pain no mother should have to sit through with dry eyes. After the service I stood by the hallway, leaning against the wall just outside the sanctuary. Everything was blurry, faces, voices, light. I was still in that fog where grief and disbelief mixed together. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I didn't have the strength to even move. That's when I heard her voice. Brielle. She was standing just around the corner, speaking low to one of her girlfriends. Didn't know I was so close. Didn't care neither. She said it plain, like she'd been waiting to let it out. Now that he's gone, I can finally take care of business. She belongs in a nursing home anyway. No hesitation. No pause. Just those words, sharp and clear like glass breaking on a kitchen floor. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared ahead like the wall could hold me up better than my own legs. I can finally take care of business. She belongs in a nursing home. Like I was some task left unfinished. Like I was furniture that needed moving. Like I was just in the way. And the worst part, she said it like I wasn't even human. Like I wasn't the woman who raised the man she married. Like I didn't matter anymore now that Isaiah was in the ground. That moment changed something in me. I had just buried my son. I hadn't even dried my face. And there she was, already making plans to erase me from what little I had left. And in that hallway, surrounded by grief, fake hugs, and cold stares, I realized something. She didn't just want to take the house. She wanted to take me out of it. Isaiah had been sick for a while before we even knew what was really going on. At first, it was just a cough. Then the weight started falling off him, little by little. He got tired fast, said it was just stress from work. But I knew my son. A mother can hear what a blood test can't always catch. Something wasn't right. One night he called me just after midnight. I could barely understand him. His voice was raspy, slurred. I rushed over. He was burning up, curled on the bathroom floor, too weak to stand. I called the ambulance myself and rode in the back with him, holding his hand like I used to when he was little and scared of thunder. The doctor said it was serious. Something with his kidneys. His body was shutting down faster than they expected. For weeks I sat beside his hospital bed. I fed him, read him scripture, brushed his hair back when it stuck to his forehead with sweat. I didn't leave that room except to use the bathroom or grab a vending machine sandwich. And Brielle? She came maybe twice a week. Never stayed longer than 20 minutes. Always had somewhere to be. Appointments, errands, obligations. She'd walk in with that fake, tight smile, kiss him on the cheek, check her phone more than she checked his IV. And then she'd leave, heels clicking down the hallway like she was headed to a meeting, not away from her dying husband. One evening, Isaiah was awake. He could barely talk above a whisper, but he looked me in the eyes and said, "Mama, I need you to talk to a lawyer." I frowned, thought maybe he was confused. "Why?" He swallowed hard and said, "Just in case anything happens. I want you protected." That sat heavy in my chest. I didn't want to think about just in case, but the way he said it, clear, certain, I knew this wasn't a moment to argue. He handed me a folded paper with a name and number on it, said it was someone he trusted. Told me to keep it safe. I slipped it into my purse, and I didn't look at it again until after he was gone. And when he passed quietly on a Tuesday morning, I felt like the world tilted, like the room had no floor under my feet. But before I could even process what had happened, Brielle changed. She took over the funeral arrangements with the energy of a woman redecorating her kitchen. Chose everything without asking me. His suit, the flower arrangements, the obituary photo. I found out when I showed up at the planning meeting, and she'd already signed her name on every line. Next thing I knew, she was parking in Isaiah's space, using his laptop, and answering calls from the bank like they were hers to take. She moved into his home office, turned it into her personal sitting room, and started telling folks she'd be handling all the house business moving forward. I overheard her one day in the hallway, talking on the phone. "After the paperwork clears, I'll have the title and account info in my name. Then we can start planning the next step and move Mama out. She's been through a lot." She made it sound like kindness, but I knew what she meant. She's been through a lot, like I was some fragile object that needed packing and storing in a back room. Like my name wasn't still on the bills. like my body hadn't scrubbed the floors of that house while Isaiah slept in a crib 2 feet away. I didn't say anything, not then. Because I was grieving, because my son's voice still echoed in the corners of every room. Because part of me still didn't believe he was gone. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to believe she'd do me like that, but the truth was louder than my silence. I wasn't even safe in my grief. After the funeral, the house got loud with silence. People stopped coming by after the second day. The calls slowed down. The food trays stopped arriving at the door. That's how it goes. Folks show up for the service, hug you too tight, say if you need anything just call, and then they disappear like they were never there. And I wasn't mad about that. Grief is lonely work, but there was one person who didn't vanish. Her name was Trina. Isaiah's cousin on his daddy's side. She was a quiet girl. Always had been. Grew up 2 streets over, used to come by when she was little and sit on my porch eating popsicles with Isaiah. She moved away for college, then came back home after a bad divorce. We'd lost touch over the years. But she came to the funeral, stood in the back, didn't say much. The next evening, just as the sun was setting, and I was still sitting on the edge of my bed trying to remember if I'd eaten, there was a soft knock on the door. I opened it, and there she was. No makeup, hair pulled back, holding a pot of collard greens and a little pan of cornbread, like she'd known exactly what my soul was missing. She didn't hug me too hard, didn't cry all over me. She just said, "I brought this by. You probably haven't eaten today." And I hadn't. We sat at the kitchen table, me in my old chair with the cushion Isaiah bought for me last Christmas, her across from me, like we used to be back when she was still a teenager. She didn't ask big questions, didn't prod, just little things. "Are you sleeping at all? Do you want me to sweep up the porch for you? Do you need someone to ride with you to the store?" And then, after a long pause, she looked up and asked, "Did Isaiah leave a will?" The room went quiet. I looked at her for a long second. My throat tightened. "I don't know," I said. "He told me to call someone, Twest, gave me a name. But I ain't touched it since. I didn't have the strength." Trina nodded. Didn't judge me, didn't rush me. She just said, "Then we need to find that number, because something don't feel right." She told me she noticed how Brielle was moving, fast, too fast, taking over decisions, making plans like she owned everything. She said it was strange how Brielle didn't even seem upset, just busy, focused, like she was checking boxes on a to-do list. I remember sitting back and thinking how right she was. How even at the funeral, Brielle had looked more concerned with who was there, who wasn't, and what kind of car people pulled up in. Trina reached across the table and took my hand. "He loved you. We all knew that. If he left something behind, it was for you, not for her. Let's find out for sure." That night, I opened the drawer beside my bed. The same drawer where I kept Isaiah's baby bracelet, his graduation tassel, and the last birthday card he ever gave me. Inside was a small folded paper. The business card Isaiah had handed me in that hospital bed, the one I had forgotten I even kept. I held it up. Trina read it. "It's a law office, we're calling tomorrow." And just like that, for the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel completely alone. That night, after Trina left, I sat in the dark with that business card resting in my lap like it weighed 20 pounds. I didn't sleep, just stared at the ceiling, remembering Isaiah's voice in that hospital bed, weak but steady, saying, "Just in case anything happens, Mama, I want you protected." I'd pushed that moment away. I buried it under casseroles and condolences and cold nights full of silence. But now it was back, loud and clear, and I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I got up before the sun. My hands were shaking just buttoning my blouse. I didn't eat, didn't make coffee. I just sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, heart pounding like it was trying to talk me out of it. I stared at that number for a long time. Dialed it once, hung up before it rang, took a deep breath. Dialed again. It rang 3 times, then a soft voice answered. "Good morning, Hamilton and Price Law Office, this is Angela speaking." I froze for a second. Then I cleared my throat and said, "Yes, ma'am, my name is Lorraine Ellis. I believe my son, Isaiah Ellis, was working with your office before he passed away." There was a pause on her end. Then she said, "Oh, yes, ma'am, we've been expecting your call." Something in my chest dropped. She asked me to hold for just a moment while she transferred me to Mr. Hamilton directly. The lawyer came on, calm and respectful. Mrs. Ellis, first, I want to say I'm deeply sorry for your loss. Your son was a good man, very thoughtful. He cared about you very much. My throat tightened. I managed a small thank you as tears welled in my eyes. Then he continued. Your son came in about 2 months before his passing. He updated all of his estate paperwork. The house, the savings accounts, the retirement funds, even his life insurance beneficiaries. I sat up straighter in my chair. The air felt still, like the whole world was holding its breath. Everything, he said, was legally and intentionally left to you, Mrs. Ellis. I didn't speak. I couldn't. He paused, maybe thinking I hadn't heard him. Then he added, and just to be clear, Brielle's name does not appear anywhere in the will. Your son made that decision very deliberately. I didn't know what to feel. Grief, still fresh in my chest. Shock, plain as day. And something else I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. The house I had built with my own hands, the life I had poured into my son, it hadn't been forgotten. He saw me. Even in his last days, he made sure I'd be protected from what he might not have had the strength to say out loud. I asked quietly, can the will be read formally? I think some folks need to hear it. He said of course. Asked if I wanted it at the office or my home. I told him the office was just fine. He gave me a date. Next Tuesday, 1 p.m. After I hung up, I sat there in silence. The sun had come up while I was on the call, but I hadn't noticed. The light was pouring through the kitchen window now, warm and soft on my hands. And for the first time since I buried my boy, I felt steady. Not happy, not healed, but steady. Like the storm had paused just long enough for me to stand again. The day of the will reading, I got up early. I put on Isaiah's favorite color, a soft blue blouse he bought me 2 Christmases ago. The one he said made me look like the sky before rain. I combed my hair back neat, dabbed a little rose water behind my ears, and slipped my feet into my Sunday shoes. The ones with the soft soles and steady heels. Not because I wanted to dress up, but because I wanted to walk in there with my head high, with my spine straight, with dignity. I arrived first. The office was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums, polished wood floors, leather chairs, a big clock ticking on the wall like it was counting every heartbeat. Mr. Hamilton came out to greet me himself. He shook my hand gently. She's expected shortly, he said. I nodded and sat down folding my hands in my lap. And then, 10 minutes later, she came in. Brielle. Wearing black heels, expensive ones. Full makeup, gold jewelry, smelling like something that cost too much and meant too little. She had on a fitted black dress like she was walking into a business meeting, not her late husband's final wishes. She smiled at the receptionist, winked at the assistant, walked straight past me without a word. Took the seat across the room, crossed her legs and leaned back like this was all routine. Like she already knew what was coming. She brought a notepad and pen. I noticed that. She thought she was about to take notes on what she thought she owned. Mr. Hamilton entered, closed the door behind him, and sat at the head of the polished oak table. He greeted us both, then cleared his throat. This is the formal reading of the last will and testament of Isaiah Marcus Ellis. My hands were still folded. I didn't blink. He began to read. The tone was calm, the words clear. It started with a short statement from Isaiah, one he had written himself, about wanting peace and protecting the people who stood by him in love and truth. Then the list began. To his mother, me, he left the house, his savings, his life insurance, his retirement investments, the vehicle, even his personal belongings, his books, his journals, his grandfather's watch. Line after line, he left everything in my name. He didn't just sign the papers, he chose every word. And Brielle? She was never mentioned, not once, not a sentence, not even a should this person survive me clause, just silence. Her smile, that polished camera-ready grin, started to crack. Her posture stiffened. She looked up from her notepad like she'd misheard something. I'm sorry, she said, voice sharp, confused. That can't be right, there has to be a mistake. Mr. Hamilton looked directly at her. No ma'am. There is no mistake. This was his updated legal directive, signed and witnessed, dated exactly 2 months prior to his passing. She stammered. But I'm his wife. Hamilton nodded. Legally yes, but this document supersedes prior arrangements. He exercised his full right to decide, and he made that decision clear. She looked at me then. For the first time since the funeral, she looked straight at me. and I just looked back. Didn't blink. Didn't flinch. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to say, "I told you so." I didn't need to ask, "Who's being put away now?" My silence was loud enough. And in that moment, sitting across from her, in that office full of air and truth, I realized something. I had already said everything I needed to say. Without opening my mouth. After the will reading, I didn't say much. I thanked Mr. Hamilton, gathered my purse, and walked out of that office with the same slow dignity I carried in. Brielle didn't follow me. She stayed behind, still trying to ask questions nobody could answer for her. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. When I got home, I unlocked the door and stepped into my house, not like a visitor. Not like someone who had to ask permission. But like the woman who had laid the foundation of that home with her own 2 hands. I stood in the doorway for a moment. The air smelled like memories, old wood polish, a hint of lavender from the plug-in Isaiah bought me. There were shoes by the door that no longer had feet to fill them. Jackets still hanging on hooks. A silence that used to be filled with the low hum of his voice when he'd talk on the phone in the other room. I closed the door gently behind me, slid off my shoes, and I walked barefoot from room to room. The living room still had the throw blanket he used when he watched basketball. The dining table still had the burn mark from when he tried to iron his collar shirt in a rush and scorched the wood. The hallway still creaked in the same spot it always had since he was a little boy running back and forth chasing nothing but time. I walked into his old bedroom. It hadn't changed much since he got married, just used less, visited occasionally. There were boxes with his name on them. A few of her things too, tucked into corners like they didn't want to be found. I sat on the edge of the bed, picked up a photo frame on the nightstand, one of him as a boy, grinning wide with missing teeth, his arms wrapped around my waist like he never wanted to let go. And I held that picture tight to my chest. Didn't cry, didn't speak, just breathed. I sat at the kitchen table after that, in my favorite chair. The one that's leaned just slightly to the left since 2014. I brewed myself a small cup of tea, didn't rush. Let the steam rise and swirl into the morning light coming through the window. And I exhaled. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had survived it. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, I drove to the hardware store, had all the locks changed. Every last one, front door, back door, garage. Then I found a little basket on the entry table where Brielle had left her extra keys. One for her, one for her sister, one just in case. I gathered them all, dropped them in a Ziploc bag, tossed them in the trash, didn't flinch, didn't check twice. Then I cleaned Isaiah's room. Not to erase him, but to make space for the quiet. Dusted the shelves, folded the clothes, boxed up what was hers, and set it by the door. Rearranged the furniture, opened the curtains, and laid a soft rug in the middle of the floor. I placed a small table in the corner and stacked it with his favorite books. Turned it into a reading room, a quiet space, a room for peace. And that night, I slept. Really slept. First time in weeks. No heaviness in my chest. No Brielle pacing the halls, no fear of what I'd wake up to. Just the sound of the wind tapping gently at the window, like it was reminding me, "You're home." It was 3 weeks after the will reading when she came back. It was late afternoon. The sun was just starting to lean west, casting long shadows across the porch. I had just sat down in my rocking chair with a warm glass of lemon water when I heard the knock. It wasn't loud. It wasn't urgent. Just there. Like someone didn't want to be noticed, but couldn't help needing to be. I opened the door slowly. There she was, Brielle. No makeup this time. Hair tied up, eyes swollen, not from lack of sleep, but from crying. Real crying. The kind that makes your cheeks look raw and your chest feel hollow. She stood there like a child who had been told to apologize, but wasn't sure how to start. She didn't bring a bag. Didn't have that confident stride. No clipboards or designer perfume. Just her, in a plain gray sweater, holding herself like the air had gotten too heavy to carry. We stood in silence for a moment, me behind the screen door, her on the porch. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "I didn't know he did that. I thought I had time." She looked away when she said it, like she was ashamed of the truth in her own voice. I didn't move, didn't answer right away, because what do you say to that? To a woman who tried to write you off, and now stood in front of you, erased? She looked back at me with eyes that were different, softer, weaker. "I was angry," she said. "At him, at you, at everything. I thought the house would be mine. I thought that was fair. I thought I had time to fix things before he left. I opened the door, just a little. Not to invite her in, just to let the wind pass through." She stepped back instinctively, but I didn't move any closer. She continued. "I don't want anything. I know it's not mine. I just—" She paused, voice trembling. Can I go in his room? Just for a minute. That's all. 1 minute." I looked at her, not past her, not through her. I looked at the woman who married my son and didn't know how to love what he came from, and then I nodded. Once, just enough. She stepped inside slowly, quietly, didn't speak, didn't touch anything else, just walked the familiar path down the hallway, the one she used to strut through like she owned it, and disappeared into Isaiah's room. I didn't follow her. I waited in the living room, staring at the old lamp that used to flicker before we fixed the wiring, listening to the boards creak beneath her feet, listening to the sound of someone breaking, not loudly, but completely. A few minutes passed, then she came out. Eyes redder, shoulders lower. She didn't say goodbye, didn't ask for anything, just opened the door, stepped out into the fading light, and left. I walked to the door and stood there, watching her walk down the steps. And when she reached the sidewalk and turned the corner, I closed the door, turned the lock, slow and firm. Then I stood there for a long moment with my hand still resting on the doorknob. Because closure doesn't come with fireworks. It comes quiet. And sometimes, redemption doesn't look like hugs and forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like letting someone enter. Just long enough to leave properly. Now let me say this plain. Sometimes, the people you invite in, the ones you feed from your own hands, the ones you make room for at the table, they be the same ones drawing up plans to push you out of your own life when they think you're too tired to fight back. It don't always come with yelling. It don't always come with fists or fire. Sometimes it's a whisper behind a closed door, a look exchanged when they think you're not paying attention, a quiet shift, where your place in the family turns into a footnote. But let me tell you what I learned. Silence is not surrender. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't argue. I didn't fall on my knees and beg somebody to see my worth. I sat still. I listened. I paid attention. And when the time came, I let the truth show up in black ink. See that what Isaiah left behind? That paper wasn't just about a house or some money or a name on a title. It was his way of saying, "I see you, Mama." It was protection. It was respect. It was love, bound and notarized. He knew what I had poured into his life. He knew who would try to erase me the moment he was gone. And he made sure they couldn't. Because here's the thing about legacy. You can't steal what was never meant for you. And you sure can't rewrite a story that was never yours to begin with. So if you're listening to this, and someone has tried to move you out of your own life, your own home, your own name, remember this. You still have the right to stand your ground. You still have the right to protect your peace. You still have the power to say, no more. You don't have to shout. You don't have to fight like they do. Sometimes the sharpest blade is silence. Sometimes the strongest stand is quiet. And sometimes, the final word is written long before they realize you were watching the whole time. Thank you for sitting with me today. Thank you for hearing my truth. If you've been through something like this, if you ever felt like somebody tried to erase you, don't hold it in. Tell me your story below. Comment it, email it, send it however you can. Because you are not invisible, you are not alone, and you are not done. Not today, not ever. See you next time. Stay safe, Granny loves you.